Welcome fellow zoo nerds and animal lovers of all kinds to Derek's Zoo Videos, where we're back at the Fort Worth Zoo. On the facility's debut tour, we explored Texas Wild, an exhibit that, despite its age, still manages to impress with its detailed theming and extensive collection of native wildlife from 5 distinct ecosystems. Now, as promised, we're shifting our attention to the newer Wilder Vision Masterplan, which is in the midst of transforming roughly half the zoo. Planning for the 4-phase master plan began all the way back in 2011, but the first phase wasn't completed until 7 years later, with the African Savanna. Opening in April 2018, this 10-acre complex was essentially a rebrand, replacing the zoo's existing African Savanna that already featured many of the same animals. The new African Savanna was designed to replicate the grasslands of East Africa. Though it is comprised of just 7 habitats, you'll find over 20 species of both the large and small variety, including a few that you won't find at too many other zoos. With that said, let's get started. Halfway through the world of primates is an offshoot that offers you the opportunity to partake in other adventures. To the left lies the Elephant Springs, but that's for another time. Continuing to the right is the overhead archway welcoming you to the African Savanna. Immediately through the archway, the complex makes its first big impression with its theming, bringing you into a recreation of an African marketplace. But something calls your attention in the distance, and just as quickly you're brought out of the marketplace and a rolling, lightly wooded grassland starts to take form. This is the centerpiece of the region, a large multi-species savanna, a tried and tested concept that you can find at almost every zoo. So what makes this one stand out? For one, it is completely encircled by the African Savanna's pathway, offering you many different distinct views that almost guarantee you'll get a good look at each of the Savanna's 7 residents. Speaking of, the species present here are a little different mix than what I've seen in other similar exhibits. Starting with the more common ones, you'd be hard-pressed to find a mixed species savanna that didn't have giraffes. Though the reticulated giraffe is a common sight in zoos, the species has been listed as endangered since 2018, with population estimates varying from 9,500 to over 15,000 individuals remaining primarily in Kenya. Despite their popularity, the social structure of giraffes is still not fully understood. Up until the 2000s, giraffes were believed to have a loose, fluid social structure with no lasting bonds between individuals. However, more recent studies have proposed that giraffe social structure is just as complex as elephants or chimpanzees. The strongest bonds exist between females and their young, with smaller herds of related individuals that may span 3 generations existing within larger, more loosely connected herds. A structure that is no doubt present in Fort Worth, with the abundance of cows that have been born here in recent years. At the time of my visits, the youngest member of the herd was Hornbill, born January 1st, 2024. But Hornbill is no longer the youngest or even second or third youngest giraffe at the zoo anymore, following the births of Ace on April 1st, Delilah on July 2nd, and Finnegan on August 18th, bringing the zoo up to an incredible 4 giraffe births this year alone. Roaming amongst the youngster-filled giraffe herd are lesser Kudu, who, although less publicized, have also welcomed some offspring of their own in recent years. They are one of the more strikingly sexually dimorphic antelopes, with the larger spiral-horned males being a darker grayish-brown, while the hornless females have a lighter brown coat. Both sexes sport thin white stripes that aid in their camouflage, but if hiding doesn't work, the lesser Kudu can rely on their impressive jumping abilities and top speeds of over 40 miles per hour to attempt to evade predators. However, their speed and agility pales in comparison to the Springbok, who can run at 55 miles per hour, ranking them as the 2nd fastest antelope in Africa. Although they resemble gazelles, the Springbok belongs to its own genus Antidorcus, which literally translates to not a gazelle. Switching over to the birds, other than their name, there's not much common about the common ostrich, a bird that can't fly, but stands over 9 feet tall, can run at over 40 miles per hour, and has wicked two-toed dinosaur feet that can kick strong enough to kill a lion. To go along with the world's largest bird, this savanna has the world's largest hornbill, the southern ground hornbill. Aside from its size, it's known for its loud booming calls that can be heard from over a mile away. Some ethnic groups in Africa believe that these calls foretell the coming of rain. Another of their standout features is their large, fabulous eyelashes, which actually serve an important practical purpose, keeping dirt and sunlight out of their eyes. Ground hornbills spend up to 70% of their day foraging for food, feeding on a variety of smaller animals. This species is also impressively long-lived, with a lifespan of up to 50 years. The Cape vulture, a native of southern Africa, roosts in large colonies along cliffs. Nicknamed vulture apartment blocks, these cliffs can be identified from many miles away due to the large amounts of white waste produced by the vultures. Like all vultures, the Cape vulture specializes in eating carrion, with a specialized tongue for stripping meat from a carcass, and a highly acidic stomach capable of digesting rotting flesh. Once more widespread, this vulnerable species is threatened by poisoning, collisions with power lines, and declining food sources. Finally, usually hanging out near the water, you'll find the pink-backed pelican. Pink-backed pelicans prefer inland wetland habitats with slow-moving fresh water, ideal for their group hunting technique, in which they form a semicircle and beat their wings to drive fish into the shallows, where they become easy pickings for the pelicans. The pelican's wide gular pouch is not only handy for scooping fish out of the water, but also conveniently strains out the water before they swallow their catch. That does it for the savanna species, but moving to the left around the exhibit, it's worth noting that, although I didn't properly film it, you'll come across a rope bridge that the smaller animals can actually walk under to reach a hidden corner of the savanna on the other side. However, if you take the left fork just before the bridge, you're taken away from the savanna to the first of the exhibits scattered around the perimeter of the complex. In this modestly designed grassy paddock, you can expect to find the critically endangered black rhinoceros. If you've seen black rhinos in an American zoo, you most likely saw the eastern black rhino. However, the 3 you'll find in Fort Worth are of the South Central variety, a much less common but still present subspecies in the US. However, in the wild, the South Central is actually the more common of the 2, though not by much, since all 3 of the remaining black rhino subspecies number under 3,000, and in total there are less than 6,500 black rhinos remaining. The South Central black rhino can be found in 10 African countries, however most of them, along with 68% of all Africa's rhinos, reside in South Africa. Judging by the horns, this is Mtoto, the zoo's only female who has been a resident of the Fort Worth Zoo since its reopening in 1992. Moving back toward the savanna is a smaller habitat for a much smaller creature, the slender-tailed meerkat. These mini excavators can move 50 times their body weight in sand and dig up to 400 holes in just half a day. They are well adapted to open, arid environments, able to survive without drinking water, and with dark patches around their eyes that protect them from the constant sun. As the path dips, the scenery changes dramatically, bringing you from Africa's deserts to its rivers, and there's no more famous resident of Africa's rivers than the hippopotamus. Fort Worth is currently home to 3 females. On my first visit, I saw Bubbles, who was born at the San Antonio Zoo in 1993 and arrived in Fort Worth from the Oregon Zoo for the African Savanna's opening in 2018. When I returned 2 days later, I saw longtime bonded pair Daisy and Johnsy, who, like Mtoto, have lived in Fort Worth since at least 1992. The hippo pool here is nicknamed the Lazy River, not just because the hippos spend much of their day napping, but because it functions as an actual lazy river with a current that flows just like an actual river, encouraging the hippos to move around as they would in the wild. While the hippos draw the oohs and ahs from the crowd, the river is home to other residents in the form of hundreds of African cichlid fish, who help out both the hippos and the zoo by feeding on the hippos' dead skin and waste, which keeps the hippos and the water around them clean, while providing the fish with a meal, a perfect example of a symbiotic relationship. After spending the day in the water, hippos leave the rivers to graze at night, where they will eat around 80 pounds of grass each night, which is why hippos are actually considered nocturnal, since this nighttime grazing is when they are most active. As the pathway climbs again, you're offered an above-water view of one end of the Hippo River, which is also the location where the zoo holds keeper demonstrations. Immediately next to that is a second yard for the Black Rhinos, where I saw one of the zoo's two males, 28-year-old Travis or 10-year-old Crockett, the latter of whom has made the headlines a few times with his playful antics. Both males joined the zoo for the African Savanna's opening in 2018. Moving on down the path is one of the complex's simpler habitats, a small lagoon for greater flamingos. The greater flamingo is the largest and most widespread of all the flamingos, occurring in around 100 different countries throughout Africa and Asia. Although you won't see it here, the greater flamingo is also the most frequent flyer among the different flamingo species. From here it is a bit of a walk to the trail's final habitat, interrupted of course with yet more views of the savanna, until you reach a tall mesh aviary for some of Africa's smaller birds. Among them are the African pygmy goose, the smallest waterfowl in Africa, who are actually a kind of perching duck and not geese. Joining them on the ground is the wattled plover or wattled lapwing, unmistakable for their distinct red and yellow wattles. Above them you'll spot superb starlings, who live up to their name with their beautiful iridescent blue plumage. Whenever you see the blue-bellied roller, you should hope to catch them in flight when their gorgeous blue wings can properly be appreciated. And the African Savanna ends as you come full circle around the central savanna, with your last stop being the location at which you can, of course, feed the giraffes. Which concludes our look at the first exhibit completed under the Wilder Vision Masterplan. Be sure to share your thoughts on Fort Worth's African Savanna in the comments below, and next time we visit Fort Worth, we'll continue right on with Phase 2.